Thomas Thirst videos are brought to you by my Patreons and viewers like you. Thank you. When the trailer for Journey Beyond Sodor and eventually the movie itself came out, the fandom was appalled. This was largely due to the fact that the engines now bounce and, not much else honestly. Journey Beyond Sodor. The fandom has had an interesting relationship with Journey Beyond Sodor, to say the least. At first we hated the movie, and then we loved the movie, but now that some time has passed, I thought it might be the right time to go back and look at this film, give some of my own thoughts and theories, point out some things you may have missed, and break down the overall plot and structure. I wouldn't necessarily call these facts, just personal observations that I've made about the movie over the years of rewatching it. So, grab your ladle trucks as we bounce straight into everyone's favourite film. This is Journey Beyond Sodor. So the movie opens on this beautiful shot of the island of Sodor. This is a reference to the opening of The Adventure Begins. They pretty much use the same set and angle. The opening shot of Thomas's 4D special, Bubbling Boilers, also uses this super cool angle too, as they reuse the same set. However, this isn't all CGI. The clouds, the water, and the base of the island are CGI, I think, but the actual image of the island of Sodor is an illustration. This hybrid of CGI and illustration is a technique that ARK has done many times in the past, such as the viaduct or the castle set seen in Duncan and the Grumpy Passenger, or the museum from Sam's promotional video, or even things you might not notice like the snow in Last Train for Christmas, or this rock in Lost Treasure, have all been partly illustrated. Journey Beyond Sodor's island intro is my favourite in my opinion, since you can actually see the island's illustration much more clearly compared to The Adventure Begins. For example, you can actually just barely make out the Vickerstown Bridge here in red, you can see the Isle of Man over here, you can see the Culdifell Hills, you can make out Edward's Branchline Peninsula. So much illustration artistry went into this 3 seconds.
Is the home of the North Western Railway.
This was the first time that the North Western Railway was mentioned in the TV series. Now, to be fair, it was mentioned in The Adventure Begins first,
In the colours he liked to see on the North Western Railway.
but I'm referring to the mainstream movies of Thomas. It would also be later referred to as North Western Railway in Series 21.
The only one on the North Western Railway.
Carly the Crane is not present at Brendam Docks. This implies that Carly came to the docks after Journey Beyond Sodor. However, some people say that Journey Beyond Sodor takes place after the season, which I don't think is true. Yeah, Edward, Carly, and especially Rosie make this timeline very confusing, though I do plan to cover Journey Beyond Sodor and Series 21 in a timeline video in the future. Many fans have pointed out that it's weird that they would do an Island of Sodor intro for this movie, when the vast majority of Journey Beyond Sodor takes place on the mainland. Some people theorise that Journey Beyond Sodor was actually written as a finale, which would also explain why there's a lot of finale-esque elements in the movie. However, I'm not so convinced. I think it's meant to be less of a this is the end movie, and more of a passing of the torch movie, if that makes sense. And that's definitely true with the things that they were planning for Series 21. Not to mention, Mark Morahan was going to be written out as the narrator in Series 22, so perhaps they gave him this Island of Sodor intro since they knew this would be the last special where he'd be the narrator. And there's other Series 21 elements you couldn't do in this movie, such as Rebecca being in the sheds, because you can't have all the engines lined up here if Rebecca's there, or Carly being at the docks. So in a lot of ways this movie really does feel like a finale of Thomas. I think it was written with the mindset of it being the end of an old era and the beginning of a new one. I love the intro description of the Island of Sodor. It genuinely feels like a poem the way it's written. In fact, I've taken the liberty of writing it out if you want to pause and read it. The way the first line describes Sodor as a home, which ties into Thomas's arc of the movie of wanting to come back home to his friends. The English alliteration of shapes and sizes. The 2-stanza structure of there are branch lines, there are branch lines. The parallels of Knapford being on the west and Vickerstown being on the east. The mentioning of the mainland beyond, which references the title of the movie. And it also plays into Thomas's adventure across the Vickerstown Bridge, and Thomas's journey to the mainland beyond. This is a really well constructed intro, and as I said, it genuinely feels like an English poem. This is the only time we ever see this set on the Harwick branch line. At Arlesborough, you can just barely make out Skiff here in the sea. Also, I really like how Thomas is nowhere to be seen in this intro. We get to see the island, Brendam Docks, Percy, Toby, Gordon, Emily, James, and Henry, everyone except Thomas. It really feels like the opposite version of the Great Race intro, and then we're slowly introduced to everyone else around him in his world. Whereas here, it's the other way around, where we're introduced to the world first, and Thomas is the last character we see at the end of the intro.
Henry was pulling a very important goods train on his way to the mainland.
I like the way they chose Henry as the one to take the goods train to the mainland, since he often took the Flying Kipper to Manchester in the railway series, and he has been to the mainland before in the Brenner era.
Henry has taken a heavy goods train to the mainland. He won't be back before tomorrow.
There's a slight continuity error here with Hero, where he's shown going to the mainland, but then in the next shot he's stuck at the signal. You could argue it was a different day, but the fact you see Connor here on the same line, and then he passes Henry again, kind of implies that this was an error. This is also the last time we see Hero for like another 4 seasons. I really like that they gave the trucks individual voices for this movie. They did that before in like series 19 and 20, I think. But what I like about the trucks in this movie is that they really do feel like fully fledged characters. I'll get more into the trucks and their new designs and also the bouncing in a minute. You can actually see Rosie here at Vicarstown before she's properly introduced later in the special. This crash with Henry is the inciting incident of the story. An inciting incident is the opening event of the story, which is meant to hook the viewer and set everything else that happens in the story into motion. In this case, Henry crashing sets into motion the whole plot of the film and Thomas's journey to the mainland. This crash reminds me a lot of the Flying Kipper crash. This shot is similar to this one from Flying Kipper. The way Henry hits the brake van and goes to the side here is framed very similarly to how he hits the brake van and goes to the side in Flying Kipper. I've always felt the intro to Journey Beyond Sodor and Blue Mountain Mystery have been incredibly similar. We get this opening establishing intro, which might I add has Thomas nowhere to be seen in it, and then suddenly we get the inciting incident with the crash, one with Paxton and the others with Henry, and then we fade from the crash into the animated intro, and then after the animated intro, we fade to Thomas's branch line, where he's seen with working with Annie and Clarabelle. I don't think this was intentional or anything, but it's just so weird how similar these intros are. This is the last animated intro we ever got for Thomas. Lost Treasure, The Great Race, and Big World Adventures didn't have any special intros, so I really like that they did one here. Also, Hit Entertainment's name is now changed to Mattel Creations. The intro for this movie is so clever. Having the molten steel run along the rails and shape the mold is such a clever design choice. It's perfect because it represents the steelworks, and the cogs represent Theo and the experimental engines. And the way the molten steel travels along the rails, you could argue is kind of like it going on a journey. This could also be a double reference to The Wizard of Oz, as Journey Beyond Sodor actually has many references to The Wizard of Oz in it, which I'll get into later. And in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy uses the yellow brick road on her journey in the movie, and I wonder if these yellow rails leading away from Sodor could represent Thomas's yellow brick road in the movie. The music played here is an instrumental version of Somebody Has to Be the Favorite. The map they use for Sodor here is the Sam Wilkinson map of Sodor. Interestingly, they actually added the New Harwick branch line. Also, for some reason, the Kirk Ronan branch line is just missing. I have no idea why it's not there, but it's weird since it's on Sam's old map, but whatever. This is very nitpicky, but I've always felt the logo here for the movie is just way too big. In other specials, the sizing is very nice. I think the sizing in the credits looks a lot better. Had it been just a little bit smaller, I think the logo would have looked a lot better. The music heard here when we first see Thomas
Hello, bunnies. Hello, squirrels.
is the same music we hear later in the film when Thomas is passing the viaduct. The first time is when we meet Thomas on his branch line when he's in the known world, whereas the second time we hear it is the first time we see Thomas when he's going into the unknown world. The trailer that Trevor has here is also the same trailer seen in Useful Railway. It was also reused as Terrence's trailer later in Series 21. This scene here with Trevor at the start of the special is also a setup for the end of the special when we see him at Mateweight. Also, Trevor is at an orchard, which may be a reference to the orchard he lived at in Series 2, even though that was on Edward's branch line while this is on Thomas's branch line for some reason. And now we get to the song Somebody Has to Be the Favorite. This is the establishing number song of the movie. This song sets up the main conflict of the movie, that James thinks he's the favorite and that Thomas wants to prove him wrong. I think the songs in Journey Beyond Sodor serve the story much better than The Great Race. I think in The Great Race they were very strict about the type of songs they had to do, like how there has to be an I Want song, or how there has to be a villain song, and there has to be a love duet. And I feel like the songs in The Great Race often got in the way of the progression of the story. What I like about Journey Beyond Sodor songs is that they're much more loose with what types of songs they do, and there isn't necessarily an I Want or there isn't necessarily a villain song. They also feel less like generic Disney songs and more like actual songs that are serving the plot and serving the story. Well, apart from Beresford's song. That being said, I do still prefer the songs from The Great Race. You can also hear a bit of James's classical theme here in the song. This plot of James and Thomas talking about who is the favourite reminds me a lot of an old quote from Wilbert Awdry. When asked who his favourite character was, Awdry responded with, "He has no favourites, because in family you do not have favourites."
Toby's my favourite, and Father always used to claim his engines were a family, and in a family you don't have favourites.
Part of me wonders if Andrew Brenner used this one line as inspiration for this plot about favouritism. Okay, on to the bouncing. I could easily do a whole video breaking down this aspect, but I'll try and keep it brief. So in Journey Beyond Sodor, the characters are noticeably more animated. Now, this isn't the first time that the characters have quote-unquote bounced, such as this time here with Gordon shaking in Magic Railroad, or one-off examples from the Hit era. Even Kevin was animated with bouncing a lot, but it is still very weird seeing these characters who were basically static for 21 seasons suddenly just start bouncing. It was a very hard adjustment period for fans, I think. But honestly, I'm surprised that they didn't start doing the bouncing sooner, considering that they considered doing bouncing all the way back in the Thomas and the Stinky Cheese animation pilot, long before the CGI series even started. The bouncing that the engines do in Journey Beyond Sodor is rather odd and inconsistent at times, although I don't really blame the animators since this was the first time that they really started animating these characters, who were traditionally static. You can tell there was a lot of trial and error with how they were animated, like this weird bounce that Thomas does at Knapford. It's a bounce that he just wouldn't do in the later seasons. But I think my least favourite thing is how often they clip through their rigs. Hurricane, for example, is constantly clipping through his rig and model. These characters were never designed to bounce at all like this, like how Merlin's cylinder casing bounce with him, while Gordon's don't bounce with him. Now, fans definitely did overreact to this change. Time makes fools of us all, and let's be real, the bouncing was really the only issue that people had with Journey Beyond Sodor. Put the bouncing aside, and honestly, this is the Thomas movie I find myself returning to the most. We honestly all reacted way too fucking much with this movie, and I'll hold my hand up and say that I overreacted as well when I first watched this movie. For this shot here, they actually removed the canopy of Knapford Station. Once you notice it, you can never unnotice it. Wilbert Awdry makes his obligatory cameo here, as it was a tradition in every special after Lost Treasure. These pigs that Thomas collect here from Farmer Trotters are later seen again at the end of the special. This might also be a reference to The Wizard of Oz, because at the start of the movie, Dorothy actually falls into the pigs, while here, Thomas collects the pigs. I'll talk more about the parallels to The Wizard of Oz later in the video. The music that the band plays here is a rendition of Somebody Has to Be the Favourite, and they also appear at the end of the special alongside Trevor and the pigs. For some reason, they put Henry on the rest for Judy and Jerome's crane arms, instead of putting him on a flatbed or something. This is the rest for Judy and Jerome's crane arms. Henry should not be sitting here. These metallic toys that Topham has in his office are actually based off real vintage train toys from the 1960s. You can tell by the wheels, and the American designs, and the silver paint. I really want to make a custom of these now. I also love how crudely painted they are. You can tell that Topham painted them himself, it's so funny. For the longest time, I had no idea what this wooden stick was that Topham had here, until I realized it's actually a chip rake. You know those wooden sticks that they have in casinos to push and pull casino chips into place? That's the stick that Topham has here. It's such a funny and clever detail that only adults would know. He also uses it near the end of the film. This is also the first appearance of the Island of Sodor map that's in the Fat Controller's office. The map and the toy trains would later become a mainstay for Series 21 and onwards. Also, similar to how the Kirk Ronan branch line was missing in the intro, it's also missing on the map here. James's line about a goods train is a callback to Edward and Gordon.
A goods train? A goods train?
A goods train! A goods train!
One thing I like about Somebody Has to Be the Favourite is how spread out it is throughout the opening of Journey Beyond Sodor. Instead of it being a giant pop song that interrupts the story, it's instead structured like a musical song, where you have gaps in the story so that the characters can speak. In between each chorus, we get an important dialogue scene which helps further the story. I think a good Disney comparison to this song would be the intro for Beauty and the Beast, where the song's chorus and dialogue are interwoven. Throughout this movie, there's this weird black box that sticks out the back of James. It's seen here at Knapford. This error would also happen in Series 21. I think it's just James's chassis sticking out of the back of him. It's very weird. This line about seeing the world is foreshadowing for the next movie, Big World, Big Adventures.
Some get to see the world and travel far away. Some get to see the world and travel far away.
It's also a callback to Thomas's line about seeing the world.
I want to
See the world!
I should have mentioned this before, but James was recast with Rob Rackstraw in this movie.
Are you talking about taking that goods train to Bridlington?
I really love that they reference a real-life location in England on the mainland. In the TV series, they tried to keep the mainland vague, like the big city in Series 4 for example, so I really like that they actually mention a real-life location like Bridlington. Bridlington seems like such a random town to pick for Thomas to go to, but I think I know why they picked Bridlington, because if you were to draw a straight line across the map of the UK, and you were to start that line at Barrow-in-Furness, where Sodor connects to England, Barrow and Bridlington pretty much line up perfectly on the map. And I genuinely think that the crew drew a line across England from Barrow and then just picked Bridlington. Edward is seen here at Tidmouth Sheds, which again proves that Journey Beyond Sodor more than likely takes place before Series 21. Rebecca was meant to join the Steam team in Series 21, not to mention that Carly and the gantry track are not there. This is the first appearance of Vickerstown Yard in the CGI series. This is also the first appearance of Red Rosie in the TV series, with her new burgundy red livery, and her new 37, and the Northwestern initials on her side. It's never actually explained how Rosie became red in the series. I actually did a video breaking this down if you want to see my further thoughts on her. This scene with James and Rosie also creates a continuity error with Series 21, because in the season, James has no idea that Rosie is red, thus making this scene with Rosie and James a glaring continuity error. And now we get our first instance of Thomas singing. Each time Thomas tried singing before, he was interrupted by James. It's only now, after taking James's goods train, that he's able to sing the song in the reprise. This reprise song Thomas does here also functions as his I Want song. Now I know before I said this is the establishing number song, which it is, but sometimes in musicals the establishing number song can transition into the I Want song. Going back to my example of Beauty and the Beast, the movie opens up with this establishing number song Bonjour, but then later the song transitions into Belle's I Want song. The same thing is true here in Journey Beyond Sodor, where it starts off with James singing the establishing number, but in the reprise it finishes with Thomas now singing his I Want song as he goes off into the mainland. This junction that Thomas passes through here is the same junction that he passed through in The Great Race. Note the signal box and note the way the tracks cross over. Topham says his line about swapping engines again.
Oh, I'm used to swapping engines around. It's my job to swap engines around.
Yes, I know.
I absolutely love this long, unbroken shot of the mainland viaduct. It's honestly one of my favourite camera angles in the whole movie, maybe even the CGI series. One thing I love about Journey Beyond Sodor is how much of an adventure this movie feels. Out of all the Thomas movies, this is the one that really feels like we're going on an exciting adventure into the unknown world. The mainland represents the unknown world in the hero's journey. Hell, even the title of the movie, Journey Beyond Sodor, references the hero's journey that Thomas takes in the movie. Another thing I really like about Journey Beyond Sodor is the way the characters are always travelling left to right. When a character is going towards the mainland, they're always shown going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. It's very rare that you see the camera flipped around the other side. One of the most basic rules in filmmaking is that if your character is going on a journey, you always show them going from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. Basically, when a character is heading towards the right of the screen, that means they're heading towards the mainland. Whereas when a character heads towards the left of the screen, that's usually because they're either lost or it's because they're heading back to Sodor. Like when Thomas is travelling left to right here as normal in the woods, but when he gets lost and runs out of coal, the camera suddenly switches up. They do break this rule sometimes, but for the most part, the left is towards Sodor and the right is towards the mainland. It helps create a sense of geography for the audience. Okay, now onto the trucks. The oil tankers, the slate trucks, the salt vans, and the regular vans all have faces now. All these trucks are based on trucks from the model series. So the face positions on the oil tankers are the same as they were in the model series. The slate trucks are based on model series photos. And even the salt vans are also based on salt vans from the model series.
He's fallen in the water.
Journey Beyond Sodor doesn't feature any returnee characters, so it seems that these trucks were likely considered the returnees of this special. I do have a few issues with them. So for example, in the model series, the vans have their faces below the vents, whereas here, the vents are just removed and the faces are moved higher on the CGI vans. The slate wagons are also based on model series rolling stock. However, in the model series, the slate wagons were actually narrow gauge trucks and not standard gauge. The trucks were actually repurposed for slate wagons made in the nitrogen era and just scaled up. This was also the only appearance of the standard gauge slate trucks in the CGI series, as they never reappeared in the series again. again, unlike the other trucks seen here. One truck did appear in the beta animation for Big World Adventures, but was later removed in the final movie. The production crew more than likely realized the error of the slate trucks being narrow gauge, hence why they were removed from the scene, meaning this is the only appearance of the standard gauge trucks in the series. Personally, I couldn't care less if they were narrow gauge or not. I actually thought they were fun designs. Although I do question the logistics of the slate trucks, since they're only carrying like 2 or 3 crates each, but whatever. They also made new faces for the slate wagons and the oil tankers too. I love how goofy the faces look, particularly with their bucked teeth, very reminiscent of the faces they had in the model series. I also really like the look of the consist in Journey Beyond Sodor. It's honestly one of my favourite consists in the show. The reason it's so aesthetically pleasing, I think, is because of how symmetrical it is. You've got this 1, 2, 3, 2 symmetry aesthetic going on, along with the brake van and Thomas making it the perfect sandwich. While the trucks may have their issues, I really appreciate the time and energy the crew put into these trucks. You can actually see Flying Scotsman and Hero here on the mainland. They also reuse some Sodor engines in the background here, like Belle is seen here pulling a passenger train, or Toby is actually seen twice here. If you wanted to, I guess you could headcanon that these are just Toby's brothers or something. I don't know. I also have no idea what this weird metal structure is. At first I thought it was a reused ballast chute, but now that I think about it, I think it was actually part of the wooden mine track used under Ulfstead Castle. The way the structure crosses over the rails just makes it so bizarre and so unrealistic. I don't know why they added it. One thing I really like about Journey Beyond Sodor is the cool transitions they have between scenes. So for example, you have this scene where Thomas enters a tunnel and then James comes out of the tunnel. A lot of very clever transitions in this movie. I really like them. Notice the way that James is travelling here in the scene? Going back to my left or right theory, because James is working on Sodor, he is travelling on the left side of the screen, because travelling left on the screen means going backwards, or to go towards Sodor. Contrast this with Thomas, a nice way of showing the different directions that these two characters are taking on their journey.
You've stopped beyond the platform again!
James stopping beyond the platform is a reference to the Series 1 episode James and the Coaches. Also, weirdly enough, this isn't the first time James pulls Annie and Clarabelle in the series. James actually pulled them before in The Adventure Begins, because apparently he used to run Thomas's branch line, which is just so weird to me. On to the scene where we meet Beresford. So, in the story, Beresford represents a troll. No, not that type of internet troll. I'm on about the other type of troll. So in mythological stories, a troll will often stop the hero on his journey, and in order to continue, you either feed the troll or give it something. And here, that's exactly what Beresford represents in the story. It's no coincidence that Thomas passes over a bridge before meeting him. Beresford is voiced by the amazing Colin McFarlane.
Oh, God, there!
Who Chuggington fans will know as the voice of Harrison. It was certainly the first thing I noticed when I watched the movie. A lot of Chuggington connections in this video, isn't there? All of the buildings around Beresford are reused ones from the show, but for some reason they're all painted these super bright, unrealistic colors. Like this workman's hut is painted bright blue, or this factory being painted yellow or green, and the worst one has to be this pink and green signal box. Like why? The original colors were perfectly fine. In fact, when Thomas meets Beresford again, the pink signal box magically reverts back to its original color. Is this meant to be another Wizard of Oz reference? You know, cause that famous scene where Dorothy goes from the black and white into color? Perhaps all these colorful buildings is a reference to that, because now Thomas has gone into the mainland, everything's all colorful. Thomas turns his face here in this scene. This is the only time he ever does this. Like I said before, the animation in Journey Beyond Sodor is very experimental, no pun intended, and this is an example of this weird experimentation. Weirdly enough though, Duke does do something similar in an illustration in the Railway series. Also, according to Michael White, Beresford's Canal is located somewhere north of England, which would make sense since Thomas is travelling from Barrow to Bridlington. Apparently, all of the locations in Journey Beyond Sodor are meant to have real-life locations. I wonder where the viaduct or the steelworks are meant to be. This crossover the trucks use in the fantasy is reused from the Dieselworks. I should also mention that the trucks' voices are pretty inconsistent. Look at the first van here, for example.
And I still can't believe we haven't reached that goods yard yet.
I don't think so.
Thomas, on the mainland, nobody even knows his name.
Thomas, I have a feeling we're not on Sodor anymore.
Now, the animation in the last few scenes has looked particularly rough and unfinished, whereas the sequence here afterwards looks absolutely stunning. This is more than likely because of ARC Productions' bankruptcy during the production of this movie, meaning some of these scenes were finished by ARC Productions, while others were animated by Jamfield afterwards. It's fun trying to figure out which scenes were animated by ARC and which scenes were done later. This whole sequence with Thomas and the trucks in the wood definitely feel like it was animated before the bankruptcy. It's a complete contrast to the crazy and wacky animation we've just seen before. This abandoned signal box here is actually the same abandoned signal box seen in Lost Treasure. It's the Minnesota Railway one that Marion passed in the movie. A bunker hatch was also added to Thomas's model here in the movie. When Thomas first meets Lexi, there is a clever fourth wall break here. When he first meets her, he looks directly at her smoke box without a face, only for Lexi's actual face to be revealed on her cab. This is because traditionally, the face on the engines in the show is always on their smoke boxes. But because Lexi's smoke box is backwards and she is cab forward, the face is on her front. This also makes Lexi the first steam engine in the franchise to not have her face on her smoke box. I really love the basis that they chose for Lexi. It's an American design known as the Freak. Is Lexi the freaky engine canon? She also shares this basis with a Chuggington character known as Piper. Another Chuggington connection in this movie. If there's one design change I could make to Lexi, it would be the stupid golden nameplate on her side. This golden nameplate was a standard thing they gave to every new character. Like Ryan got one, Samson got one, Porter got one, hell, even Daisy got one before it was removed. Instead of this stock standard nameplate thing that they put on her, I think the number 21 would have looked so much better here. Not only because her basis had the number 21, but also because it could have been a cool reference to Journey Beyond Sodor being produced during the 21st series. There's also no characters with the number 21 on them. Giving Lexi the number 21 is such an obvious thing to do. According to some clickbait articles, Lexi is apparently meant to be gender fluid? But like, I don't think there's any evidence of that in the show. Lexi definitely has a very fluid identity, where she changes between characters while she talks, but I don't think that makes her gender fluid. Me personally, I think Lexi just has an attention deficit disorder. An attention deficit disorder is when you have a difficulty focusing or maintaining attention. You tend to focus on your impulse, or have hyperactive behaviors, and that's exactly what Lexi has here, where she changes her accents constantly, and why she's always bouncing compared to everyone else around her. Just because she swaps between accents doesn't make her gender fluid. She's obviously just suffering from an attention deficit disorder. Speaking of neurological disorders, we also have Theo, who is the first character in the series to have autism. No, Bruno wasn't the first, it was in fact Theo. Now, to be fair on the All Engines Go crew, they had briefly considered using Theo for the series, but they later reverted back to Bruno instead, making Bruno the second autistic character in the franchise, not the first. A lot of people seem to hate on Theo, and honestly, I don't get it. Now, as a person diagnosed with Asperger's myself, personally, I think the way that they handled Theo was just fine. The way he speaks is very blunt.
Are you being scrapped? Scrapped?
And the way he doesn't have any sort of filter
Yes, engines get scrapped when they're not useful and nobody cares about them anymore.
are all traits very much associated with autism. Theo being autistic is also meant to be a shout out to the Thomas fandom, as a lot of Thomas fans in the fandom also have autism. And, according to an interview with Christopher Keehan, Theo's character is meant to be very mechanically minded, in that he has a great understanding of mechanisms and how things work.
Your water tank is overflowing.
This interest in mechanics is also represented by all the cogs and gears on Theo. It's meant to be like his special interest. I wish that they had shown this more in the final film. It's not that Theo is necessarily bad representation for autism or anything, it's just that he was never properly utilized as a character. I also love the way the animators have Theo shaking. This is another thing that autistic people do. It's known as stimming. So for example, autistic people might shake or flap their arms, or make repetitive motions with their bodies, as a way of concentrating or calming themselves down unconsciously. This is exactly what Theo is doing here, where Theo's engine is sort of stimming himself. I don't really like how everyone just sweeps Theo under the rug. Whether you like it or not, he was the first official character to have autism in the franchise. I mean, come on guys, give me a break. Another thing I like about Theo is how he has no specific basis. With the exception of Lady, pretty much every single character in the franchise has a specific basis in mind. But what I love about Theo is that he has no specific basis. His body looks kind of like Blue Circle, but all of Theo's gears are based on the Cole-Birkdale engine gears, which is historically relevant since the Cole-Birkdale locomotive is often considered by historians to be the first ever steam engine. And his cab also looks like an add-on too. I think Lexi's description of Theo pretty much sums him up.
And Theo's something experimental too.
Oh yeah, he's also the only character to ever have a lisp. Despite Lexi having an American basis, for some reason she's given a Scottish accent.
Start pulling, Theo!
She also sometimes sounds French,
Stealth engines are designed to be hard to see.
Australian,
They fell right over.
she sounds like an air hostess at one point, and she even does American accents too.
Whoa, nail it! Up to the brim!
I actually have a theory as to why Lexi has a Scottish accent in the series, but I will get into that later. Many people have pointed out the ridiculousness of these old abandoned engines being somehow in steam, but there is an offhanded line here by Lexi which tries to explain it.
We are fully stocked in the coal and water department, in case our drivers come to try new parts or make improvements.
This line here about Merlin
Oh, and there's Merlin too.
An invisible engine?
is foreshadowing for when we meet him later in the story. This line by the trucks actually turns out to be true,
Or get another engine.
There's where he's going!
since Hurricane later takes them in the middle of the night. It's quite a clever setup and helps explain why the trucks would just go with a new engine. This line by a truck is a reference to The Wizard of Oz.
Thomas, I have a feeling we're not on Sodor anymore.
Toto? I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
There are so many parallels and similarities to The Wizard of Oz in Journey Beyond Sodor. Dorothy is the protagonist and is all dressed in blue, who tries to get home to Kansas, while Thomas is trying to get home to Sodor. The first character she meets is a scarecrow, who lacks a brain, while Thomas meets Lexi. She meets the Cowardly Lion, while Thomas meets Theo, who also lacks confidence. There's also the Tin Man, who wants a heart, but finds out he had it all along, much like Hurricane. There's also a Wicked Witch, who you could argue is kind of like Frankie, and there's a wizard, who you could also argue is like Merlin. There's loads of other parallels too, like Dorothy falling into pigs at the start of the movie, while Thomas collects pigs, or both of them singing I Want songs, the yellow fields being similar to the one that Dorothy passes, this line from the truck, this shot of the steelworks looking like the Emerald City, Hurricane melting is similar to the witch melting, the infiltration of the witch's castle is like a scene near the end of the movie, the intro with the yellow rails, which you could argue is like the yellow brick road that Dorothy takes in the movie, and many more parallels which I will point out as we continue in the video. Now, it's a very loose parallel, and some things are different, like Hurricane melting instead of Frankie, but I will point those out as we continue. One thing I think Journey Beyond Sodor doesn't get enough credit for is how accurately it shows the steel industry. All of the terminology and all of the processes shown in this movie are pretty accurate to real-life steel mills. This tower on the building is known as a blast furnace. I actually studied a bit about blast furnaces when I was in school, and I think the crew did a very outstanding job at showing how the steelworks industry works.
Put the ingots in the cooling area and make sure you empty all the slag onto the slag heap.
We're then introduced to Frankie and Hurricane. Hurricane is also an experimental engine, based on the experimental Decapod engine. He even shares the number 20 with this engine too, but in the movie he doesn't seem to have any connections to the experimental engines, as him being experimental is never actually acknowledged. Hurricane also is missing one of his rods. This is so he can turn the tight radiuses of the steelworks. Frankie, meanwhile, is based on a Hutswell-Clark diesel shunter, which worked at the Manchester Shipping Canal. She even shares the same number and has the MSC, or Manchester Shipping Canal initials, on her top, which might also stand for Mainland Steel Company. Frankie's concept livery was also a lot more closer to her basis. Frankie and Hurricane, along with Merlin, are also the first engines to have their numbers on their buffer beams. Frankie is also the first female villain of the franchise, and while I do like Frankie's design, honestly, I kinda wish that they'd given her some makeup or something. This was kind of an era where they started to remove makeup from the characters, and I'm not saying every new female character needed makeup or anything, but I think for what Frankie represents, I think some over-the-top bombastic makeup would have worked really well. Similar to other popular female villains like Cruella de Vil or Ursula, I think having very bombastic makeup like them, I think would have been a very cool design for her. I think it would have sold her a lot more as a female villain and made her design pop a lot more. Frankie never actually refers to Thomas by his name in the movie, only ever calling him Little Tank Engine.
What's your name, Little Tank Engine?
At first, it seems innocent, but Frankie later uses it as a form of abuse towards Thomas.
Quiet now, Little Tank Engine. Time to start working!
little tank engine!
Make sure you empty all the slag onto the slag heap, little tank engine.
Often abusers will use pet names as a way of reinforcing their dominance. In this case, Frankie always refers to Thomas as Little Tank Engine as a way of dehumanizing him and reinforcing the idea that he's little, similar to how real abusers can use pet names against you. There are a lot of red flags like this. The way Frankie describes Thomas as very important is exactly how groomers work.
But you look like you must be a very important little engine.
It's a very serious and real thing that can happen to children, and one of the messages that I really like about Journey Beyond Sodor is that it shows children what can happen to you if you're not careful. It's a very sad but real message that every child should learn, and I have major respect for the crew that they dare to tell such a dark story like this. This line about Hurricane taking trains to Bridlington,
I deliver goods there all the time.
not only sets up that he's taking Thomas's train later in the story,
Oh, I took care of them. I took them to Bridlington in the night.
but it also explains how he'll later meet James in the story. And now we get to the hottest place in town, which is the villain song of the musical. This is them basically pitching the idea to Thomas to work here through song. I love how it feels like a 1960s pop song, and I really think it fits the time period of the TV series. These ladle trucks seen throughout the movie are actually made by Nitrogen Studios. They were first seen in Day of the Diesels and were used in the smelting shed at the Diesel Works, but were later repurposed for this movie. This magnet is repurposed from Butch's magnet. You could also argue it's foreshadowing for when Thomas gets picked up by it later in the third act. The way the molten steel pours over the screen here is foreshadowing for how the steelworks will become a prison for Thomas later in the story. This line that James says here,
Or fell down a mine, or crashed into a station master's house.
is a reference to the episode Down the Mine and the episode Thomas Comes to Breakfast. I love this shot here where it zooms in on Thomas's empty berth, only for him to be revealed in his new shed. Like I said before, I really like a lot of the transitions in this movie. They are very cleverly constructed. Now would be a good time to go over how the blast furnace works. So this huge tower here is known as the blast furnace, and it's charged by coke, iron ore and limestone. The molten steel and the waste product, aka the slag, come out from the bottom. The molten steel can be seen here going over to this ladle pot, where it is then carried over to the tundish for it to be molded. The slag, meanwhile, is poured into ladle trucks to be dumped outside on the slag heaps, as it is the waste product from the blast furnace. Although, if I remember correctly, slag has been known to be repurposed for fertilizer for crops, which might also explain why there are fields of crops around the steelworks. Again, Journey Beyond Sodor does not get enough credit for how accurately it portrays the steel industry. This scene is foreshadowing the end of the movie, where Hurricane's wheels melt into the ground.
It can melt your wheels right into the ground.
Once again, I absolutely love these transitions, with Thomas's accident being paralleled with Topham's accident.
And Edward is collecting the band.
Edward collecting the band, I think, is a reference to Series 7. This line by Topham is a quote from Winston Churchill.
Just keep calm and carry on.
And the face that James pulls here is a reference to his model series face. The steel rails seen here are the same rails used to construct the Hawick branch line. I imagine the steelworks would have had to have made a lot of steel rails for that branch line, and considering that Thomas lost some of them, I'm guessing those steel rails would have had to have been replaced. I wonder, did Thomas unintentionally cause the steelworks to fall behind on their work? It's the same steel rails after all. Perhaps Thomas had more to do with the steelworks being under pressure than he thought.
We're both so happy that you came along, Thomas.
This scene here is also our first instance of Hurricane being nice to Thomas, while Frankie is more concerned with deliveries,
The steel won't deliver itself.
setting up that he does have a good heart at the end. Frankie refers to the ingots here.
Put the ingots in the cooling area and make sure you empty all the slag.
Ingots are essentially bars of steel and are used for easier transportation. We also briefly see the ingots here on Thomas's flatbed. In steel production, the ingots are moved to the cooling area, and once again, I really love how accurately the terminology is used here in the movie. Notice how Frankie is now using her pet name, Little Tank Engine, against Thomas.
Little tank engine.
Little tank engine. What? Little tank engine?
As I said before, this is a technique used by abusers to come off as nice, when in reality, they're dehumanizing and reinforcing the idea to Thomas that he's weak and that he's just a little tank engine. Then we get the song I Want to Go Home, which is also an I Want song. Usually when a character gets an I Want song in the middle of a musical, it's usually a reprise of the first I Want song, but because Thomas's first I Want song was really just an outgrowth of James's song, Thomas's wants and desires have changed from the start of the movie, which is why he now gets a new I Want song here. Thomas lists off Percy and Toby first because they also run the Farquhar branch line. The head-on shot here is also similar to how they are framed in their old shed. This shot of all the engines has a lot of parallels. The Iron Twins parallel Bill and Ben here, Glyn parallels Stephen as a callback to Over the Hill, Hero parallels Spencer here as a callback to Hero the Rails, Judy and Jerome parallel Rocky, and Connor parallels Caitlin. Duck, Diesel 10, and Winston do not appear here in this lineup, and for some reason Rusty is the only narrow gauge engine to show up here. I don't know why, it was most likely a mistake. There also might be some foreshadowing for a shed for Edward here. Notice how all of the original Steam Team members are at the front of the queue, whereas Edward is the only original Steam Team member to be at the back, and the character that he is paralleled with is Philip. This may have been foreshadowing for Edward being written out of the show, and later being paired up with Philip at Wellsworth. This map that Thomas imagines of Sodor is actually done in the same style as the map that we see in the Fat Controller's office at the start of the movie. All of the markers on this map of the UK show real life locations, such as the Blackpool Tower, a real tower located in Blackpool. There's this cathedral, which is based on the York Minster Cathedral, located in York in North Yorkshire. Try saying that twice. There's this fun fair located in Lincolnshire, which is based on the Cleethorpes Fun Fair Ferris wheel, which dates back to the 1950s. There's this cottage in Birmingham, which is based on Anne Hathaway's famous thatched cottage, also located in Birmingham. There's also Tower Bridge here in London, and there's also two locations that I couldn't quite make out because they're just off screen, so if you know them, please comment them down below. You would not believe how much time I spent trying to figure out what these locations were. This shot of Thomas in the steelworks parallels the hottest place in town, like this shot here of the molten steel pouring over the screen, like a prison, this shot of passing the crates, this shot of passing the steel conveyor belt, this shot of the ladle truck, and this shot of Butch's magnet. I think this was done as a way of paralleling the first song, because in the first instance Thomas was excited about working at the steelworks, whereas in the second he now regrets it. When James makes fun of the Fat Controller here, he parodies the line he said at the steamworks to him.
It's his job to swap engines around. That's what a railway controller does.
It's my job to swap engines around.
Yes, I know.
That's what a railway controller does.
It's also quite similar to how Thomas made fun of the Fat Controller in The Great Race.
We still have a railway to run.
This sequence of Thomas trying to escape the steelworks is like a spoof on prison escape movies, such as The Shawshank Redemption for example, where Andy Dufresne escapes the prison during a storm. Thomas even syncs up the lightning and the gate crashing sound, similar to how Andy syncs up the rock and the banging sound. This storm that happens when Thomas escapes the steelworks can also be seen as a metaphorical storm. The rain afterwards can also be seen as a metaphor of cleansing Thomas. Before, when Thomas was in the steelworks, his face was all dirty and sooty, and it's only after Thomas escapes from the steelworks does the rain wash all of the dirt and soot off his face, as a metaphorical way of cleansing Thomas from the steelworks. It's also quite similar to The Shawshank Redemption as well, with the way the rain cleanses Andy Dufresne. As foreshadowed before, we actually meet Merlin here, although we don't actually see him. His model is seen in the background, but for some reason it just disappears. Maybe he really wasn't lying when he says that he was invisible. Merlin also directly mentions that he's the experimental King Arthur class engine.
The experimental prototype King Arthur class stealth engine.
Besides Boko's basis being mentioned in the series, this is one of the only times in the TV series a basis is directly mentioned.
Come out, wherever you are.
This is another reference to The Wizard of Oz. When Dorothy arrives in the land of Oz, Glinda the Good Witch sings the song Come Out, Wherever You Are.
Come out, wherever you are.
Similar to how Hurricane sings it here. I have a slight issue with James's subplot here. I really don't like how James just magically shows up at the Bridlington goods yard. Now, to be fair, it was set up in the last scene that he was going there, and I'm sure James knew his way, but we never actually see any of James's journey to the goods yard. We don't ever see him cross over the viaduct, or we don't ever see him go past this junction or anything. It just cuts straight from the shed to him at Bridlington. I think this also undermines a lot of the journey that Thomas went on in the movie as well. The movie has set up that this is a very long journey to Bridlington from Sodor. I understand that Thomas's journey probably took longer because he got lost, but would it have not been too unrealistic to also have James run into some characters that Thomas also met on his journey, like Beresford or something? I don't know. Another issue I have with James's subplot is that it doesn't really add too much to the story. It's just James on the branch line, James at the sheds, James at Knapford, James on the branch line again, James at the sheds again, but then he's just magically somehow at Bridlington. But I feel like the story repeats itself itself just a little too many times. And then the scene of Bridlington just kind of comes out of nowhere. I actually have a suggestion for how this could have been fixed. Again, I'm fine with the first few James scenes, like the one at Vicarstown and the one at the Steamworks and even the one at Maithwaite, but as soon as we get to that first scene with him at the sheds, that's when I think James should have made the decision to go to the mainland to find Thomas. And so now, every time we cut back to James, it's actually him progressing across the mainland. So maybe we see him cross over the viaduct, and then we cut back to Thomas at the steelworks. Maybe we see a scene with James interacting with Beresford, and then we cut back to Thomas again at the steelworks. Then we cut back to James. Hell, maybe James even meets Theo and Lexi. James still ends up in the same place he did in the actual story, but it gives a greater sense of geography for the mainland. You'd get rid of these boring scenes of James on Sodor, it would make the situation worse for Topham now that 2 engines are gone missing, and it would have helped explain why the experimentals would risk themselves for James, because they would have already met him. Bridlington Goods Yard reuses the railway show yard from The Great Race. Now, when I first seen this movie, I assumed these yards were meant to be the same location, but that doesn't seem to be the case since the surrounding town and the castle seem to be removed. These red diesels are the same ones seen in The Great Race, only now they actually speak, and we get to see them up close. This was such a clever surprise, and I'm really glad that we got to see them. Out of all the mainland diesels, Ullen is the only diesel's name we know of.
Nope.
Going back to my left and right theory, notice how Thomas is now going towards the left of the screen. This is because he is now trying to get back to Sodor. Again, he heads towards the left of the screen when he leaves the steelworks, he heads towards the left of the screen when he passes through the experimental engines yard. When he leaves, he goes to the left of the screen, and when he passes by Beresford's Canal, he is still always travelling towards the left of the screen. And now we get to the low point of the story. This is where Thomas is at his lowest low, and I will admit, I do find it quite sweet how Theo and Lexi try and help him out. This is the Cheer Up Kid song. Think of Moana singing to her granny, or Bippity Boppity Boo from Cinderella. It's a song that is sung when our protagonist is at his lowest point in the story. It helps cheer him up, and that's exactly what happens to Thomas here, with the experimentals trying to cheer him up. After all of the foreshadowing and all of the setup, Merlin finally makes his grand reveal into the story, and while it is a very cool reveal, I feel this happens way too late into the story. I honestly would have preferred if Merlin had just been revealed with Theo and Lexi at the beginning of the movie, as revealing him here feels way too late into the story in my opinion.
And help you find the way to the island of Sonar.
This is part of a running gag in the movie where Merlin mispronounces words.
You and Lexi need to create a conversion.
This gag about Sonar would also get paid off in a future episode.
This is my first time on the island of Sonar.
Something I neglected to say about Journey Beyond Sodor is how funny the movie is. Like this Sonar line from Merlin here, this Nope line from Ullen, Merlin's They're Back line.
They're back!
Not to mention the comedy with the trucks, or how hilarious Rob Rackstraw's James is in the movie. They really pushed a lot of the comedy in Journey Beyond Sodor, and it's by far the funniest Thomas movie out there in my opinion. In this scene, Thomas teaches Beresford a lesson about friendship. The morals for Journey Beyond Sodor are all over the place. You've got the favoritism moral with James, you have the we can be useful moral with the experimentals, you have the imprisonment and slavery moral at the steelworks, and now you have this moral with friendship and Beresford too. It's just interesting to me how many different morals there are in this movie. And now we get a reprise of The Hottest Place in Town. I absolutely love this fourth wall break, with how the song just doesn't work on James at all, and the way the music just fades out. It's the funniest thing ever. This line is a callback to the song Who's Thomas?
Thomas?
Who's Thomas?
It's also the only time Frankie ever refers to Thomas by his name. Ironically enough, since he's not there. This line about Thomas seeing the world,
I think he wanted to see the world,
is foreshadowing for the next movie, Big World Adventures. This scene here of the experimental engines and Thomas overlooking the steelworks is another callback to The Wizard of Oz, where the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow all overlook the witch's castle. This scene with Thomas sneaking into the steelworks is also similar to The Wizard of Oz too. This line by Theo is a reference to Little Engine Who Could.
I think I can't, I know I can't.
This line by Frankie is another callback to The Wizard of Oz.
Come out, wherever you are!
Similar to Hurricane's line before. I don't know why they had Thomas be picked up by this magnet and dropped into the molten steel, only for him to fly over this way and then fly over that way. It all just feels so unnecessary and random. Where does this bucket even come from? Is there another gantry under this gantry? I genuinely think this scene just exists so that they could put a clip into the trailer. Now, to be fair, it could have been a lot worse, as the storyboards show. Also, these round things that Thomas is on in the storyboards are actual wraps of steel. Good on them, I guess. I love that Hurricane sacrifices himself to save Thomas. It had been set up before that Hurricane cared for Thomas a lot, so the fact that he would actually take molten slag for Thomas really says a lot about his character. The way Hurricane says here that he's melting,
I'm melting! I'm melting!
is similar to the witch from The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy throws water on her.
Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting!
And now we get to Journey Beyond Sodor's most controversial scene, where Frankie and Hurricane are redeemed. I personally do not buy this. At least with Hurricane, he had some signs of being a good guy, but Frankie has never shown any signs of being a nice guy at all in the movie. She was manipulative, she kept reinforcing the idea that Thomas was a little tank engine, she kept gaslighting him. Now, I'm not leaving Hurricane off the hook here either, but at least he had signs of being a good guy. The first instance of Frankie being a nice guy is this scene right here. I wish they'd handled Frankie and Hurricane similar to how they handled Skiff and Sailor John, because in that movie, they both start off as the villain characters, but Skiff is later shown to be nice to Thomas, while Sailor John is shown to be mean, similar to how Hurricane is nice to Thomas, whilst Frankie is not. I wish that they had handled Frankie and Hurricane similar to how they had handled Skiff and Sailor John. I also have one more suggestion for how they could have fixed this in the story. So you know the way Beresford's plot about having no friends never gets paid off? What if Frankie's punishment is that she gets sent away to Beresford's canal? Not only would this fix Beresford's plot, because now he actually gets a friend, but now Frankie would be punished because she would be constantly be tortured by Beresford's antics. And with Hurricane's wheels being melted and Frankie being sent away, the experimental engines would have been able to be useful at the steelworks. That way, Hurricane also gets punished by having his wheels melted, but when he's repaired, he still gets his redemption. Much like Skiff, if you're good, you'll get rewarded, and if you're bad, you'll get punished. This way, Beresford gets his friend, Frankie gets punished, the experimental engines become useful, Hurricane also gets punished, but he gets his redemption arc in the end. Would that not have been a better way to handle this ending? Also, Frankie's basis works at a canal anyway, so it would have just worked out. All that being said, I won't lie, I do think the ending is very sweet, and I love how the two plots come together. The Steelworks engines and the experimental engines both have a missing piece from each other. The experimentals want to be useful, while the Steelworks engines want to help. So it is sweet seeing these two worlds come together. It's such a shame that we never got to see them again. We did see Beresford again in the Royal Engine, and Merlin got his own episode too, but I find it such a shame that we never got any follow-up stories about what happened to these guys. They don't even get a mention in the Merlin episode. This obviously isn't the movie's fault, but the fact we never got to see anything from the Steelworks again does make this movie feel a little redundant. Going back to my left and right theory, notice how James and Thomas are now travelling to the left side of the screen. They pass Beresford towards the left, over the bridge towards the left, through Vicarstown across the left, and past the steamworks. But other than the rule being broken at Maithwaite, they are pretty consistent with the screenology of this movie. We also get the reprise of Somebody Has to Be the Favourite. This song really shows how far James and Thomas have come in the story. And like I said before, this message feels very in line with Audrey's philosophy of how families work. In families, you don't have favourites. It's a very real and true message to the series, and the ending to Journey Beyond Sodor is quite heartwarming. In this scene, you can actually hear Teresa Gallagher voicing Lexi instead of Lucy Montgomery.
Everybody join in when everybody has a part to play.
As I said before, I had a theory as to why Lexi had a Scottish accent. I think Teresa Gallagher actually gave Lexi her Emily accent in the draft version of the movie, hence why Lexi has a Scottish accent in the movie. It would also explain why Teresa Gallagher is mistakenly heard here. The hoist that Hurricane is on is the same hoist that Sydney was on in Day of the Diesels. There may have also been some foreshadowing for Rebecca here too. In the song, they sing red, green, yellow or blue. I think this lyric is a reference to the roll call song line red, green, brown and blue, but it's weird that they would change the line from brown to yellow, since none of the Steelworks characters have any yellow on them at all. I bet you anything this was setting up the roll call lyrics were going to be changed to red, green, yellow and blue for Series 21, as Rebecca would be joining the Steam team. But when she got cut from the season, this became a lost Easter egg in the final product. This scene of Kevin, Victor and Henry pays off their earlier scene. This whole scene pays off all the earlier scenes from Sodor 2. The band here is the same band that James pulled earlier in the special. The pigs that Thomas collected can be seen here, as well as Farmer Trotter. Trevor is seen here, and he was also seen on Thomas's branch line earlier. And even the station they're at, Maithwaite, is the same station that James was at earlier in the story. All payoffs to earlier scenes in the movie. The chip brake that the Fat Controller had earlier also makes a return. And he even conducts the engines when they're singing with it. Get it? Because he's a conductor and he's conducting them? I see what you did there, Andrew Brenner. Oh boy, and that was Journey Beyond Sodor. I think this movie has gotten much better with time. I love how dark they went with this special. I also love the comedy in the movie as well. All the characters get their time to shine. James is hilarious in the movie. I love all the new characters, I think they're all great. But I think the thing I like most about Journey Beyond Sodor is that it actually feels like a proper Thomas special. It really feels like we're going on an adventure into the unknown world. And it's honestly one of the specials that I find myself returning to the most. So now that I've gone through the movie, let's go over a few bloopers I found in the film. Starting with, Emily's tender running board is missing. The black box on James is sticking out of him here, here, and here. The chimneys are missing on the buildings here. The church is missing from this shot. No smoke is coming out of Samson. Hero's shown going to the mainland, but in the next shot he's on Sodor. When Henry and Connor pass, they're now in different sets. Rails are missing from the tram tracks here. Kirk Ronan branch line is missing on the map. James has Thomas's whistle sound. Note how the smoke emanates from his whistle here. Hero's load now changes from before. Judy and Jerome are somehow here, despite being shown to be at the Knapford Station set. The Vicarstown logo is missing here. The water effect here is just layered on top of the clip. Note how it clips over the van as the train passes by. These trees are in the middle of the road. Hero has no brake van here. This structure crosses over the tracks. This train has no brake coach. The first scene with Theo and Lexi is missing music score. All the bouncing scenes have horrific clipping. When Hurricane bounces here, you can actually see through him. The points are consistently missing in the steelworks. Frankie's buffers aren't pushing these trucks. Rusty's here for some reason. Thomas's flatbed switched loads not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. Thomas is way too far away from the track here, but in the next shot, Hurricane is just able to pull him up. Merlin's model disappears. This tanker is not on any rails. As these trucks are being shunted in the yard, their buffer beams aren't touching. Beresford is missing here. Victor is on standard gauge rails here. James passes the turntable here, and yet he somehow turns around. And did I mention all the crazy clipping with the engines? I probably did, but I'll mention it again. There is a lot of crazy clipping with all the engines. There are definitely way more errors I could find, but this video is already running long as it is. So yeah, that was Journey Beyond Sodor. It's honestly grown on me over the years. It is a movie that truly tells a story about what it's like when you go somewhere over the rainbow. Thanks for watching, everyone, and Slán Abhaile.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby.